We're back now with more of this raw, unedited videotape of the Chinese government suppression of the students in Tiananmen Square that took place yesterday. We had to fly this tape to Hong Kong. We've just received it just a few hours ago because there is no satellite transmission directly from China allowed anymore. You are looking now at the scene in Tiananmen Square where the battle raged for a long time. This was early Saturday and Saturday afternoon Washington time. That would be late Saturday night and early Sunday, before dawn Sunday in Beijing, China. Kyle Gibson was in the square. She's in the Beijing Hotel at the moment, just a few hundred yards away and from her vantage point on the 15th floor. Kyle, we're now looking at scenes that show a soldier actually being led away by students, or at least that's what it appears to be.
Sam, we in fact have received reports. We've been told that they are fairly reliable reports that several soldiers were pulled from those burning APCs and beaten probably to death. Other soldiers, we have been told, were in fact pushed back into the burning vehicles where they obviously never got out alive. We have received several reports of soldiers being beaten and led away. I never saw face-to-face a soldier being beaten, but I am told by many reports that this is what happened around me.
Well, earlier in the videotape that we've just shown, we saw soldiers not only being led away, but pushed and being shoved by the crowd. I take it the soldiers were in green uniforms. Is that correct?
Yes, Sam, they were dark green uniforms. And in fact, we have received another report that there was indeed a lynching of some kind within the past 24 hours, that a soldier was beating upon a student and the crowd rushed the soldier and beat him and then apparently hung him from a power pole. We have been told this within the past hour or so that this happened.
And now we're seeing scenes of students being carried in by other students. I take it to an emergency receiving room or a hospital. Let me call in. Thanks very much, Kyle. We'll get back to you. Let me call in Jim Laurie. And Jim, while all of this was going on, you were taking a survey of hospitals around the city. What did you find?
Yes, Sam. We went to 3 hospitals during the course of the early morning hours, and the situation was very grave indeed. These hospitals simply were not equipped to handle these many wounded coming in. We have now counts from the Chinese Red Cross, which suggests that there were 2,600 dead. There were thousands of wounded. The students say a total of 7,000 killed and wounded. We tried to count it all up ourselves, and we're not able to do that. After a while, the hospitals refused to give us figures. But, for example, in one hospital we went into, there were simply not enough beds. People were put on the floors. They were put on benches. Everybody was also extremely angry. We interviewed doctors who were outraged. The wounds were mostly bullet wounds, and in some cases, a nurse told us they were these exploding bullets, creating a very serious wound which the doctors found very difficult to deal with.
So, Jim, in fact, what we have is a situation in which we know that many people were killed, many people wounded, but we don't have accurate figures at this time. We'll be back with a final word. Thank you, Jim. We'll be back with the final word right after this message. We have one more series of pictures we want to show you, and that is the aftermath of the bloody battle that you've been taking a look at. Now, this is in daylight, obviously, in Tiananmen Square, and the aftermath of the battle that you've just seen over the past several minutes in pictures during the darkness hours. This is on the outskirts of Tiananmen Square because the students were actually moved out of the square. This appears to be a burned vehicle. One of those perhaps that was burned, that I can't tell, that we saw in the darkness hours. These are the streets near Tiananmen Square, students milling around on the street still, but of course not in the square, because when the military moved in, the military simply occupied the square. I'm told by our correspondents there are rows on rows of armored personnel carriers, tanks, other vehicles, and of course many, many soldiers in the square, but no more students. So these are streets adjacent to Tiananmen Square in the daylight hours of Sunday after the suppression that the Chinese government put into effect. We'll have more on the scenes that you just saw later in the day on World News Sunday, on This Week with David Brinkley, and at 7 o'clock tonight Eastern Time, Peter Jennings will anchor a special report, a full hour, showing you what went on in China and calling in our correspondents from there and elsewhere. Throughout the day, as events warrant, we'll have special reports. I'm Sam Donaldson in Washington. Have a good day.
This special report has come to you from ABC News. We now resume our regular program schedule.